One of the things that has shocked me, really shocked me, and it has to do with the Christian response in this country to so-called Christians, the response to the Black Lives Matter movement. Once again, the bastardization of Christianity in this country is very apparent. Now, you have to keep in mind that Christianity, of course, supported slavery. Christianity supported the subjugation of our fellow human beings as being almost subhuman. Maybe I should take out the word almost. The Christian church has produced a legacy of just horrific actions around the planet, not just the United States. But the Christian church, traveling with imperialist conquerors, I'm talking about the 17th and 18th centuries, as they, quote, discovered, end quote, all these lands that existed beyond Europe and brought with them religion, steel, and guns. Is that the name of a book? God, Guns, and Steel? Something like that. And the first thing that the Christians did, of course, when they arrived in these countries is just absolutely destroy indigenous belief systems, indigenous culture. They just uprooted it like a bunch of weeds and imposed this death cult that Christianity had become. It had nothing to do with the teachings of the rabbi from Nazareth. Jesus, nothing whatsoever to do with him or his message. Had everything to do with the dominance of the Roman Church, the Catholic Church, the Christian Church, call it as you will. Because most of these religious terrorists who traveled with the conquerors were of the Church of Rome. Some of them were Protestant, but mostly Catholic. So the Christian church has a history of aiding and abetting racism, poverty, fear, distrust, imperialism. It does. I guess we can agree with that, can we not? In 1963, when 250,000 demonstrators gathered at the Lincoln Memorial and heard Reverend Dr. Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, all those people did that under the prayerful invocation of Archbishop Patrick O'Boyle of Washington, D.C. And in his invocation, he called for the Holy Spirit to open the eyes of Christians to the injustice of racial discrimination. He condemned violence against our black brothers and sisters and praised the activists who had possessed the courage to go forth like Moses in search of a beautiful country. Now, that's the opening to a piece by Elizabeth Bruning in the New York Times. So here we are, all these decades later, 5 decades later, those hopes laid out there by Archbishop Patrick O'Boyle, in many respects, if not all of them, are unfulfilled. Oh, I know, black folk can go anywhere white folk can go. Well, that's still not true in certain parts of the country, but we'll stipulate that it is the law now. Okay. Elizabeth writes about 1 in 5 Americans identify as Catholic as of 2018. And roughly 6 in 10 white Catholics felt that police killings of black men were isolated incidents rather than evidence that we all are familiar with now of a profound and lethal bias by police forces against black males. Prominent Catholic commentators, including Bill O'Reilly, you remember him? From Fox, who resigned or was fired or whatever after so many instances of statutory rape and threatening women with tanking their careers if they didn't, get on their knees in front of him, and it wasn't to pray. Also, Father Dwight Longnecker, a Catholic commentator. But these people fear and reject the Black Lives Matter movement. I'll get back to Longnecker in a minute. American Catholic unease with Black Lives Matter has been particularly noticeable during the protests over the killing of George Floyd. Statues commemorating Junipero Serra, a Spanish monk responsible for founding several of the Catholic Church's missions in California in the early days of European colonization. Those statues have been torn down by protesters outraged by what they say was Father Serra's eager participation in the conquest of North America, including the torture, enslavement, and murder of some of the Native Americans he intended to convert. But isn't that what I just said? That was standard operating procedure. It wasn't an aberration. The church, however you want to define it, the Christian church is notorious for torture, slavery, murder, death, genocide, intended and unintended genocide. Think of the Crusades. Think of the Inquisitions. Anyway, other religious statues have also been damaged by protesters. And as Elizabeth writes, coupled with the vandalism of a handful of Catholic churches, along with a slew of ordinary buildings, the attacks on statuary have sparked fury among conservative Catholics, confirming what they perhaps already believed, and that is that racial justice movements, or maybe just this particular one, Black Lives Matter, are antithetical to the Christian faith and are in fact rooted in Marxism and atheism. Yes, Marxism, atheism. Isn't it odd, don't you think, the way Christians start frothing and foaming at the mouth and going into almost speaking in tongues every time this comes up, and they start bringing up the term Marxism and atheism when it was their own avatar of God, Jesus of Nazareth, who told them to stop this bullshit. Repeatedly, he told them. He only gave, 3-4 sermons? But the message was always implicit and sometimes explicit. As ye do this to these, the least of my brothers and sisters, you do it to me. The least being the people who were hungry, naked, in prison, sick. Who? A Catholic anti-abortion activist, one Abby Johnson, tweeted in June, quote, "The Catholic Church is burning. And every day, liberal Catholics continued to throw matches on her with sacrilegious nonsense like this." And she was referring to an icon showing Mr. Floyd as a Jesus figure dying in his mother's arms. Dirty liberal Catholics, eh? Andrew Sullivan, a Catholic writer, argued in July that the Black Lives Matter movement and Christianity are, quote, fundamentally incompatible worldviews, end quote. I mean, it's astonishing to me. These are people making these statements that I'm quoting for you from Elizabeth Bruning's article. These are people who define themselves as theologians, religious experts. They know all about Christianity and Jesus and God and the apostles and the disciples. They know it all. And yet they make these kinds of statements. that the Black Lives Matter movement and Christianity are diametrically opposed. It's just, don't yell. Okay. It's just astonishing to me that the so-called Christian church in the year 2020 in America is so out of tune with what their Jesus of Nazareth said 2,000 years ago. It's astonishing to me. And that's what pisses me off. And that's why over the course of the last year, I really unloaded. I know I did on Christians. I called them everything but human. I used the F word so many times, it lost its effectiveness, at least for me. But the rage that bubbled up inside of me, because I was brought up a Christian. I was brought up in that faith. Now, when I say brought up, I mean it was all around me. But the person who had the most influence on me was my grandmother, who was a devout Christian of the Jesus of Nazareth sort. But that's why so many times I've just raged and screamed and defiled anything remotely resembling what is current Christianity. It's all bullshit. And you know it yourself. I mean, even to the point of the mega churches. You know, Jesus said, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there is my church. But I digress. In July, in fact, July 5th, in a statement, Bishop Thomas Daly of Spokane, Washington wrote this, quote, Black Lives Matter is in conflict with church teaching regarding marriage, family, and the sanctity of life. Moreover, it is disturbing that Black Lives Matter has not vocally condemned the recent violence that has torn apart so many cities, end quote. Really, Bishop Tom? Are you shitting me? But his opening statement, BLM is in conflict with church teaching regarding marriage. What the hell is he talking about? Family. Are you kidding me? And the sanctity of life. Mr. Bishop Thomas Daly, you moronic fool. Isn't the sanctity of life at the heart of the Black Lives Matter movement, you jerk off? Isn't that what started it? The belief that life was sacred and that the police were gunning down young black people for no... You're yelling. For no reason. Where has Bishop Thomas Daly been lately, besides his head firmly up his ass, when he can say that Black Lives Matter is in conflict with church teachings regarding marriage? I'm sorry, old Bishop Tom, I missed that one. Family. But black people have been forced, because of white attitudes, to invest in family. Where else were they going to go, you half-wit? See, these are the Christians, and this guy's a bishop. Bishop of Spokane, Washington. These are the people that just make my vision get all kind of red. Woo! Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com,
and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.